Picture a rhinestone moon hanging over the Smoky Mountains, its glitter caught in the curves of a woman whose laughter could drown a bar fight and whose bank account could buy the county twice over. People say Dolly Parton was spun from tinsel and good intentions, but the shine was welded on like armor, and every giggle hid a negotiation, a bruise, or a prayer whispered so quietly even the Grand Ole Opry never heard it. Today we peel back that sparkle, one teasing layer at a time, and when the last bead hits the floor, you may never hum 9 to 5 the same way again. Dolly's first miracle was turning poverty into legend. The log cabin in Locust Ridge gets painted sweeter every Christmas special, but inside that shack, cold air sliced through floorboards like a knife, and the perfume of the season was hot coal dust. She learned early that narrating misery makes folks lean in, yet darker fragments stayed buried. A relative rumored to trade moonshine for favors, a preacher who lingered too long after Sunday service, a childhood so raw she once admitted she tolerated splinters because splinters were free. That hunger shaped a girl who could thread a story tighter than baling wire and sell it by the yard. By 17, she hit Nashville with a suitcase that smelled of kerosene and notebook paper. Executives loved the voice but snickered at the face, telling her to stick to songwriting because the lens added 10 pounds and she already carried too many hopes on her hips. Dolly went home, cried into a diner napkin, and came back next day in a tighter skirt, taller heels, and a grin sharp enough to slice macho egos. That moment she vowed to turn herself into a cartoon bombshell nobody could ignore and everyone would underestimate. Enter Porter Wagoner, the sequin king whose TV show owned living rooms while the Vietnam War flickered beside it. Porter signed Dolly as duet partner, then locked the contract like a jail cell. On camera, they harmonized like peppermint and bourbon. Off stage, he counted her steps, phoning hotels to confirm she was alone and banging on her dressing room door if he heard another man's laugh. Dolly, raised on survival math, stored every slight, saving them for payday. Stress dove straight into her bloodstream. She gulped diet pills laced with pharmaceutical lightning, washing them down with black coffee until her heart kicked like a mule. Tabloids swore she carried a silver flask of peach schnapps for nerves and that a brother fetched strong powder, industry code for coke, though family loyalty still muddies the gossip. Confirmed fact, doctors ordered a hysterectomy in 1982 after she collapsed mid-show, and the recovery left her staring at a pistol until a friend begged entry and hid the weapon. Money steadied the tremors. By the time Wall Street noticed her publishing catalog, Dolly had outmaneuvered half of Music Row, buying back her masters and turning Dollywood into a cash geyser disguised as family fun. The park's wooden coasters screamed nostalgia, but ex-employees whispered about seasonal layoffs that left half the county scrambling for grocery money each October. Dolly countered with photo ops hugging orphans, scholarships for every kid within banjo distance, and a grin that sold forgiveness wholesale. Beneath velvet sleeves, rumors inked new chapters. A nurse swore she'd seen full-color murals climbing Dolly's arms, roses and Bible verses hiding surgical scars. Another insider claimed the designs mapped every procedure: jawline tune-ups, waist cinches, reserve implants stored like spare tires. Dolly teased on late-night shows, admitting a few pretty little pictures, but never rolling back enough fabric to confirm or deny the Sistine Chapel of country flesh. Then there's Carl Dean, the ghost groom. Married since 1966, he appears in public about as often as Elvis at a laundromat, fueling theories wilder than a possum on espresso. Some say Carl favors backroad truck stops over red carpets. Others insist the marriage is paper camouflage for a lifelong bond between Dolly and childhood confidant Judy Ogle. The trio never comments. Dolly just winks, saying she's not trading her man because good husbands are harder to find than chicken lips. While gossip hounds hunt for scandal, Dolly floods libraries with free books. Her imagination library has mailed more than 200 million volumes, a figure nearly as impressive as the royalty check she banked when Whitney Houston detonated "I Will Always Love You." Yet generosity flirts with publicity, and cynics wonder if the woman who nearly vanished behind a bathroom door now nurses the world as penance for secrets she can't unsing. Loneliness still sneaks backstage. Bandmates swear she keeps hotel rooms lit all night, television murmuring reruns so silence never grows teeth. On tour, she carries a mannequin head so stylists can pre-pin the next wig, but some nights she chats with it like an old friend, telling jokes nobody else hears. A guard once spotted tears sliding under a lash before showtime. Dolly dabbed them away and hit the stage brighter than a welding torch. Fame sharpened her accent into a blade. In boardrooms, she'd crank the twang to sound harmless, then sign million-dollar clauses while executives underestimated the syllables. She once convinced engineers to reroute a waterline because mountain ferries might be disturbed. They laughed, obeyed, and the change later saved thousands when a flash flood ripped through the original trench. Shareholders call it bulletproof instinct. Dolly calls it hillbilly feng shui. Songs tell half-truths, too. Jolene fused two real women, a red-haired bank clerk who flirted with Carl and a little fan who asked for an autograph. Dolly stitched their names like a voodoo doll, pocketed the royalties, then invited both muses to Dollywood for funnel cakes. Jealousy sells, and she's been monetizing insecurity since vinyl hissed off the presses. When Me Too roared, reporters waited for Dolly to name predators. She sidestepped, saying Nashville treated her kind, though an early producer once suggested modifications no surgeon would dare today. She laughed it off. Yet a friend recalls her burning a demo tape afterward, vowing never to enter that studio again. Humor can bury trauma deeper than denial. Religion drifts through her life like tobacco smoke. She tithes big, quotes scripture between innuendo, and bells ring at her Dollywood chapel every Christmas. Fundamentalists call her outfits near blasphemy. Dolly mails them donation receipts and love, and their fury fades until the next neckline hits a billboard. Family remains the unresolved chord. She spoils nieces and nephews, but says she and Carl skipped parenthood because careers devour time. Confidants suspect infertility deepened that choice into destiny, and Dolly channels maternal instinct into every kid clutching an imagination library envelope. Yet on late-night bus rides, she stares at playgrounds rolling past, smile slipping until the next neon sign stitches it back on. Industry suits once tried to bully her into selling her catalog for quick cash. She responded by founding her own company, licensing songs to elevators and blockbusters, stacking royalties high enough to buy Porter Wagoner's mansion twice. Legend says she keeps a framed note from Elvis's manager demanding half the publishing before Presley would record "I Will Always Love You." Dolly declined, and that single refusal later bankrolled Dollywood's first roller coaster. Behind closed doors, health scares mount. A private physician travels as assistant. Rumored spinal procedures explain performances seated on a rhinestone stool. Her vanity break, she jokes. Yet crew members saw her icing vertebrae between encores, muttering she'd trade every diamond for one pain-free day. Social media crowns her Saint Dolly, yet trolls spin darker lore. Offshore accounts, hush agreements, land deals greased by political favors. Nothing proven, all tantalizing. Exactly how tabloid oxygen feeds a legend. Dolly plays it flawlessly, posting just enough kitchen selfies before vanishing behind mirrored tour bus glass. As twilight thickens, she writes graveyard songs that creak like attic boards. Recent single, "Don't Make Me Come Down There" offers playful divine warnings. But insiders say the first demo dripped melancholy so heavy the label demanded rewrites. Even in her 80s, she tailors shadows, controlling how much darkness the public can swallow. One last whisper. During a mastering session, Dolly supposedly slid an engineer a cassette labeled "For Release Upon My Wings." The tape allegedly contains a farewell album explaining every rumor, the tattoos, the Vegas collapse, the true body count of broken hearts left in recording booths. Whether myth or marketing, the cassette sits in a bank vault, accruing interest at the rate of legend. And the stubborn hope that one more rewrite can still heal a childhood that never finished its first chapter. That hope almost flatlined in 1986 inside a midtown Manhattan hotel, famous for rock star wreckage. Dolly flew north for press junkets, but aides noticed she skipped dinner, double-latched the suite, and let room service plates congeal beside untouched champagne. A maid entered next morning to find curtains strangling the sunrise, bedside Bible open to Psalms, and empty blister packs sparkling like carnival litter across the carpet. The phone, off its hook, emitted a drone that sounded too much like a heartbeat slipping underwater. Friends arrived, doctors rushed in, and by afternoon Dolly was upright, hair teased, telling staff she'd just needed a long quiet. Nashville tabloids buried the incident under yellowed invoices, yet insiders still call that night the silence before the resurrection. That whisper campaign became protocol. In Nashville, the mandate is safeguard the brand, and Dolly's halo was worth more than soybean futures. Opry producers quietly revoked press passes for any journalist sniffing tragedy. Photographers who snapped her slipping into late-night clinics found their lenses shattered by security offering polite apologies. One disc jockey swears a station owner burned a file of medical invoices live on air while Dolly's limo idled outside, windows shaded darker than sorrow. A deeper crack surfaced when Porter Wagoner sued her in 1979 for a slice of profits he claimed she owed. Court papers cite 7 figures, but insiders insist the true wound was emotional hostage-taking. Dolly settled, bought her freedom, then quietly purchased every master tape of their TV episodes, so rerun royalties flowed through a pinhole she alone controlled. Years later, she paid Porter's hospital bills during his final illness. Country music never wrote a ballad bitter enough for that twist. Detractors still parse her philanthropy, sizing the imagination library as a tax temple in rhinestone drag. Accountants disagree, but Dollywood pay stubs show starting wages hugging legal minimums. Seasonal workers say supervisors instruct them to smile like Dolly's watching, even while health coverage evaporates each November when roller coaster bolts get greased for winter. Management counters with scholarship raffles, emergency grocery grants, and holiday turkeys so plump they need liability waivers. Under those spreadsheets lies a pharmaceutical rainbow. Retired hairstylist Cheryl Katner, silenced by non-disclosure, hinted in a shelved memoir that Dolly kept a velvet pouch called The Kit, color-coded capsules inside, sunset orange for stage jitters, powder blue for back spasms, stark white for insomnia that clanged like church bells at 3 a.m. She timed each dose against a backstage stopwatch and never missed a curtain, though roadies recall hotel bathtubs filled with ice for inflamed joints and a rule that no one touched her coffee mug but her. Armor cracks, though, and 6 decades under Klieg lights turn fractures into valleys. Friends confide Dolly's dread isn't death, it's fading before she can choreograph goodbye. That bank vault cassette is her parachute. A mastering engineer sworn to silence claims the tracks spill everything. A lullaby for the sister lost to addiction. A waltz about the pistol she almost embraced. A hymn describing tattoos that climb past her elbows like secret garden vines. Whether myth or masterstroke, the tale alone keeps cameras aimed. So here we are staring at rhinestones that flicker like emergency beacons over a life stitched from glitter, bone, and unspoken bargains. If this saga twisted your image of St. Dolly, remember legends are mosaics, broken shards rearranged until they gleam. Tell me which rumor sliced deepest, which act of kindness soldered the cracks, or which secret you still refuse to believe. Type your confession in the comments. Smash that like button so the algorithm spreads the gospel faster than wildfire through Appalachia. And subscribe right now because next week we're uncorking another jar of moonlit mayhem about the country royalty you thought were spotless. Keep your headphones charged and your skepticism sharp because the real Nashville never sleeps. It just waits for the right storyteller to nudge the skeleton closet open. And remember, every halo casts a shadow. Dolly's shadow may stretch from Tennessee to Tiananmen, but the light she aimed at the world still warms millions of library steps and bedtime story pillows. That contradiction is the thrill. Kindness forged in chaos. Stick around because the secrets only get juicier from here, and you never know when the next rhinestone might pop off to reveal another hidden scar. or a diamond you never saw coming. She learned another kind of silence in those years, the tight-lipped kind executives adore because it keeps secrets billable. Silence can be profitable if you decorate it with rhinestones and call it humility. She did exactly that, smiling through interviews, dodging pointed questions with a laugh so bright, journalists forgot what they asked. But in the quiet after cameras cut, she traced the outline of a dream that didn't include stages at all, a forest path behind her Tennessee home where only cicadas kept time and nobody demanded another encore. There was a night on that path when lightning bugs stitched yellow warnings across the trees, and she confessed to the dark that she was tired of being immortal. Immortality sounds glamorous until you realize it treats you like merchandise. Every wig becomes a barcode, every lyric a SKU, every interview a receipt you never agreed to sign. She promised herself then to take back pieces the machine hadn't priced yet. The hush of early mornings, the smell of batter frying in her own kitchen, the right to cry without powder caking the corners of her eyes. Taking back pieces meant building walls, and not just the emotional kind. Security cameras multiplied around her properties, and insiders claim she reviews the footage herself, because trusting guards is just another gamble. Her staff signs non-disclosure agreements thick as hymnals, and visitors surrender phones at the door. Some call that paranoia. She calls it gardening, pruning the poisonous vines before they choke the roses she still wants to bloom. Even roses bruise, though, and Dolly has buried enough friends to know laughter isn't a vaccine against grief. When Kenny Rogers passed, she tried to sing, but the notes shook, so she baked pies for his crew instead because sugar feels sturdier than words when sorrow splashes into the mixing bowl. When Naomi Judd's absence rang like an empty bell, Dolly sent flowers big enough to shade a porch and wrote a letter she never showed the press. Rumor says she keeps copies of those letters in a fireproof box labeled with a joke only she understands. Not everyone applauds from the pews when she testifies in sequins. Activists have accused her of playing both sides, draping rainbows for a festival crowd, then pivoting to scripture for conservative donors. She shrugs and says, "Love is love, money is money, and as long as both feed hungry mouths, she'll juggle them with nails long enough to be weapons." Detractors say that's moral gymnastics. She says it's survival choreography, and she learned it in honky-tonks where a wrong lyric could get you booed out before the tip jar filled. There's also the matter of that Vegas collapse. Depending on which bartender you believe, she hit the carpet during a rehearsal, eyes rolling back while a paramedic whispered vitals and her publicist whispered spin. The official line was dehydration. The unofficial version adds pharmaceutical cocktails, altitude sickness, and a week of 14-hour rehearsals because perfection eats sleep for breakfast. The show opened on time, of course. The curtain doesn't care if you're broken, it only cares that you glow. Bright is her currency, and she spends it ruthlessly. Studio managers say she rewrites lines until sunrise, bringing donuts at 4 a.m., so nobody notices she hasn't blinked since midnight. Costume designers swear she can detect a misaligned rhinestone from across a warehouse, then soothe your panic with a story about her mama stitching quilts by lantern light. The story calms you, the correction stands. The rhinestone gets re-glued and Dolly keeps her empire welded tight without raising her voice above a conspiratorial whisper. But there is a crack she can't caulk with charm: legacy. She worries about who curates her memory after the final curtain. Will fans remember the woman or the wig? The teacher or the tease? The storm survivor or the storm chaser? That's why the cassette matters. That's why the vault hums. She wants the truth in her own handwriting, sharp edges sanded but still sharp enough to feel real when future ears press play. Until that day, she keeps moving. She records podcast cameos, drops surprise rock albums to remind Nashville it never owned her range, and invests in clinics that quietly patch the gaps rural Tennessee still trips over. The clinics don't bear her name in neon. They just open their doors on Tuesdays and Thursdays and patch up miners, grandmas, and guitar techs with the same care she begs for her battered back. If the city ever forgets her, she has contingency plans. A museum blueprint sits in a drawer, featuring a hologram Dolly that answers fan questions with new quips written years ago. Another drawer holds a trust for stray dogs because she swears animals never asked her for autographs or percentages. Fame took a toll, but it will also pay the bill for 1,000 creatures who only know her as the soft hand that pours kibble at dawn. So if you still think the smile is the whole story, rewind the reel and watch what her eyes do when the crowd roars. They don't widen, they narrow, measuring, calculating, protecting. Joy is there, sure, but so is vigilance. She is happy to entertain you, but she will not let you own her. That's the real dark truth. The beauty was strategy, the kindness was armor, and the girl from Locust Ridge learned to turn bruises into brand equity without ever letting the bruiser see her bleed.